This is a rock star.
Right.
Well,
You mentioned that a lot of people don't want to talk to you, Dale. There are some groups that I think are well intentioned, and I think there are some groups that are maybe not so well intentioned. And some of them say that the way to do this is you gotta escape the legal system and do all these things. And I think there's probably a time for that. But I think some of those groups fall into a trap where they are easily categorized as terrorists. And I don't think that you fit in that category the same way. But why do you think it is that people don't want to work with you? Is it because they don't understand it, or do they just think that you're, selling a pipe dream? I mean, because I've talked to a number of people about legal stuff, and especially with what you've actually put together, what you wrote, and a lot of the things that you've been through, you are by far one of the most articulate when it comes to the arguments that you put forward. So why do you think it is that people don't want to talk to you? Because it seems like there's a lot of people who seem to have some traction, and suddenly they're not in the cool kids club. And it definitely seems like you might be one of those people.
Yes, and it's because there's a couple of things, and I mean a lot of it. Okay, let's be real. What I'm doing is directly putting the screws to the CCP, because this is where there's a lot of involvement. And in Canada, like the Canadian Security Intelligence Services straight out said that the government, every government from Trudeau to Mulroney to Trudeau, and this now included, has been influenced by the CCP. So, and then you had Trudeau taking cartel money. So these are the people that have a beef with me. I don't want, like, when people ask me along the way, what do I want? I said I want justice. I don't care about money. I care about justice, because you know what? You can't bring back your loved one if they're dead. Money doesn't do that. You can get money back. Do I want to survive? Of course I do. But I'm not obsessed with money, and I'm not going to take money to turn away from this. And accountability is what I want. Some people want to do things a certain way. Some people don't want the hard work. And like you were saying, the people that had that sort of go their own way type of thing, you have to understand the mindset of the people we're dealing with. This is the mindset of a slave owner. These people believe they own us. This is why they treat us this way. They're better than us, because if you thought everybody was equal and that each person had liberty that you do, you wouldn't treat them this way. They're never going to let us run away. And I also, because I'm very direct, I don't beat around the bush. This is why some people don't want to work with me. Some people don't understand it. And I don't care about whether or not I hurt somebody's feelings, because if this is the truth and you were involved in it, then there's no mercy for you. If you're going to go ahead and you didn't know, then turn away, and that's fine. I understand being pressured and deceived, but if you had full knowledge of this and you did nothing, I'm sorry, but there's no mercy for you, and I don't care, because consequences have to happen. And I don't care about feelings, I care about results, because feelings doesn't make people not die. And so some people don't like that. They don't like that I will hold anybody accountable. That's really it, because I'm not here to make friends with people when they're criminals trying to destroy our countries, destroy the world. This is nuts. And when people get over the target, a lot of people get targeted, and that's what happens. Look at the FBI COINTELPRO program. You'll see that in principle happening everywhere. Look at the J6ers. Right?
Oh, it's bad. I mean, I think where I see a lot of people that they want to play games. But you get in the cool kids club when you are doing something that they're okay with and doesn't ruffle their feathers. When you're doing something they can monetize off, or you're doing something that they can get in and co-intel.
Mm.
Those are really the three things. And I see it goes for Tina too, because there are a lot of people that have been very vocal about Tina's situation, and I think there are a lot who, frankly, don't really give a shit about Tina or about what just her case, for example, means for the country in terms of the elected officials' rights to question some of these things and to act in their authority on behalf of the people, and the civil rights issues, the constitutional rights issues that so clearly are highlighted in Tina's case. And they want the clicks, and they want to be able to make money on it. And I think when you can't provide those things to them, they're really not all that interested.
No, and this is also like accountability, and there's consequences. This, like I sit down, I'm not going to sit down and tell anybody that you're just going to go in and read a piece of paper and hand it to them and have somebody do their job instantly. This is not the way it works. But I'm being realistic with people. It's going to take a lot of pressure, and it's going to take hard work. And sure, will there be pushback? Of course there will. Like I tell people, it's like the criminal that you watch on the high speed chase. He's doing everything. He's got like 10 cop cars following him. He knows eventually there's going to be a policeman down the road laying a spike belt for him, but he's still doing everything he can to get away. This is what we're literally dealing with, right? And so we have to understand that we're dealing with criminals. You look at people, they look at somebody in a suit, and this is what they do. They'll send the white people that are criminals to deal with the white people. They'll send the black people that are criminals to deal with the black people. And these people are experts at being criminals. And I watch them do this all the time. But what people have to understand is that every group is being attacked differently, and they all bring something to the table. And I'll tell you, with this whole Marxist thing, black people have been dealing with this for a very long time because they used the natives and the black people as the test subjects to see how well it worked. And they were like, now we're going to push it out to everybody because if they did it to the white people first, they wouldn't be successful because they're the largest group. So they had to do it to the smaller people. This is why they benefit from segregation, so that you don't see who your neighbor is, and then you don't see this happening. And then when they're like, okay, now they're pushing it across the board to everybody, and it's like, hey, look at the guys who understood what they needed to do with the Marxism, because you're not as fully prepared. And each group has something that they have to bring to the table, and we all need to bring all of our collective skills together to deal with this. Otherwise, we are cooked, because these guys are very smart behind this. They've got a lot of very intelligent men behind all these stupid people that you see in front of you. And they're the ones who's pulling the strings, and they're using our very nature against us. Even things like, look at the modern today with, like, for example, feminism, red pill, the hatred between men and women. Families is how you have a strong country. Families in the West are breaking down, and this is done by design. If you wanted to cripple a country from the inside, you would destroy the family. And you're doing everything that I see happening now. This is what you want when you want to destroy the world. You don't want to destroy a nation. Do what you're seeing now. Everywhere, the election, nothing, everything is broken. Everything from the family all the way up to the top of the government, it's all broken. We have to correct it.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a vicious cycle at this point, because they've it's still fixable, hard, and going to take a long time, especially get the nation back on track. But they've destroyed the family to so much of a point that so many of the things that they're doing that would immediately trigger a response to fight back on some of these things, if I think on average the family unit was in a better place, and the just the mentality of your average American person was in the wrong place around like values. They aren't, and so you have they've eroded the family, which then fails to fight back at the obvious usurpation of our rights and the takeover of our country. And it's going to be a relatively small group, as it has been already, on the election fight and COVID and so many of these things that have been going on, who I think are ultimately going to carry the battle. I mean, you have many instances like what you've gone through and what some of these individuals, John Eastman, the attorneys that they've been going after, the elected officials and clerks like Tina Peters and others in other states that they've gone after, and I think I don't have a family yet, but I shudder sometimes because I don't. Every time I like take a step back, because I feel like I've grown kind of numb, and I don't know, this is kind of off the record, but I've emotionally just kind of turned off a lot of my reactions to how screwed up everything is, and I think over the last 5 years I've kind of unconsciously just come to accept that this is normal in this country, and I don't want that for my future family or for my siblings.
Oh,
And
no,
it's kind
not
of a scary thing, because what you've gone through and your daughter and your family, it's that's something that should never happen.
well, and it's still going through it. Like, I mean, I'm at the point here in Canada where I cannot find work, no matter what it is. Like, the people that are against this have cut me off of everything. Like, I mean, if it wasn't for my family, I'd be on the street, and they're going after they're going after anybody who helped me. Like, they're going after my family as well for doing this because I pissed off people so badly because of what I've done. And people are like, well, why don't you just try to do that? I'm like, what? So I should let people get killed? I said I should let them get away with this. Like, I mean, in the petition and what people will look through when they see it is that there is the government committing fraud, like the courts taking fraud to steal my house, to do all of these things that were in there, and it was blatant. And this was given to the police, this was given to every level of government, and nobody's doing anything. When you're sitting down, and what people have to understand, when you're in this situation and you have no rights, you're a slave. This is slavery. What they did to Tina Peters, they ran her out, drained her financially, and then they put her in prison. This is if you go and read Title 18, and if you have like basically simulated court hearings that aren't following the law, and you put people in through those processes, that's peonage. You can't do that. But this is what we're seeing. And then she's put in prison where she's now broke. She's not generating income. She's being impoverished, and she's being controlled by the state. This is another form of slavery. When you're looking at what they're doing with the kids, when you start taking someone's child, this is the worst thing that you can do to a person. Because you go to talk to any parent where they're taking their child unjustly, they'll tell you it would be more merciful to kill them than it is for them to take their child. What then you do then is a parent who loves their child, they're going to go and do everything they can to um, get their child back. And I've seen people that have lost their houses, they've sold their houses and everything because they want their children. And this is the natural reaction of a parent. So when the state takes your child and does this, they know that they're going to do this and they're going to abuse the legal system. This again is another form of slavery because now you're controlling them by taking their child unlawfully and using the force of the state. And this is not a real court hearing. A lot of these things are off the record. So you're getting a system of slavery being put in place. And then when you break these families down, then you're creating the grounds and the breeding grounds for people like Epstein to get their trafficking victims because they have local trafficking networks. They're using the Child Protective Service, the family courts, they're using the criminal courts to take away the fathers and all these things unjustly. And then this is exploitation at its finest, and it is a well-oiled machine. And when you want to take down like people talk about the Epstein files, when this petition, the way that it's structured, going after the judicial branch, which is protecting all of these criminals, is to help take down on a grassroots level the structure that keeps people like Epstein in power and keeps them avoiding being held accountable. And this is what we have to do in every area, needs to put this forward. And this is what I was trying to get people to do, engage in the grassroots to take back their country, not just saying you're going to use this as a magic bullet because there's not, but to use this with whatever you're doing, because everybody has a vested interest in this. And the way that it's structured, you can sit down and see that the branch that should be keeping the government in check is completely broken. And this is why all of those grievances happened.
Yeah, broken indeed. And, you know, the and you're you a lot of the things that you say really hit home. The trafficking thing is very real, and I'm grateful that a lot of people have woken up to it over the last few years. But it's such a silent rot because you'd never know. Like so many of the trafficking situations, and Denver is one of the highest in the country. I think it was the highest. I don't know if it still is this year. Um, I mean, you just never know. I mean, these kids, like they could be someone in your neighborhood. It could be a family member. It very often is a neighbor, you know, father of a friend or something like that, cousin. And they could go to school every day. You know, they might just be the quiet kid. They might be the kid who acts out. You have no idea, and they could be, you know, going somewhere every night. And then there are so many who just disappear, and you never see them again. And
It-
it's the numbers are so much greater than anyone realizes.
yes.
I won't say anyone, but it's so common, and it's like the one of the biggest scourges that we need to erase from this country.
Oh, yes. Most people don't understand how trafficking actually works. A lot of people just watch what they see on TV and they think that that's trafficking. That's not
Yeah,
really the way it works in practice. One of the biggest factors to trafficking is finances, right? And keeping people in a bad situation. When you're looking at how they're destroying the economy and you're watching what's happening, this is literally how you create the conditions for trafficking, right? What I look at in what happens in my case, what the courts and the governments are responsible, because when they start to steal your house and all of these different types of things, they're putting you in a position of poverty, and then you lose your property and all of that. When you're in that position, you're easy to be exploited. And this is how they were able to go ahead and exploit my oldest daughter, because every time I had, like, they were cutting off every aspect of my funds. They were dragging me through court. They stole everything I had. The government was protecting the people who were stealing from me. And then what little money I had, I did try to keep my daughter of a place from either try to trade sex for a place to live or whatever the case may be, to put her in a hotel or whatever. Because over here, whenever I went out the door, someone was literally trying to take me out. Like, I mean, people were trying to drive into me, run me off the road all of the time. People were getting assaulted. I mean, I went to the police to take information at the direction of the police, and they assaulted me and my 75-year-old mother, right? And so I'm like, every time I step out the door, someone's trying to do something wrong to me. And the police here, I mean, every time I saw them, it was, what's going to happen now, right? So in some cases, my daughter was better off being there because of what was happening to me here. But then it was still, instead of giving her the help that she needed, she was in that situation. But what they're doing with the courts, and they're driving people out of money, lawfare helps to contribute to trafficking. And this is why they need to put the brakes on it. Also, this destruction of the economy through their policies is creating trafficking. All the chaos through COVID, trafficking started to go through the roof, and it's only going to get worse. And now, because this is why you're watching so many people going on to girls going on OF, because they can't hack it.
yeah.
And it was done
Yeah,
this
well,
way.
no, it's bad because they're sold this idea that they're just going to be they're going to work for themselves and they're free and they're going to have all this money, and I mean they sell it in the media and in a lot sneakier ways to the kids, and the what you're talking about, they go and attack the individual, and it makes it easy to exploit, but it also makes it's impossible to manage what's going on, you know, because when you're broke, like you can't you can't be around your kids. You can't keep an eye on them. or they split up the family, or you have two parents that are working full time just to pay the bills. You
Yes.
can't keep track of your kids. You don't know what's going on. It makes it easier for them to be exploited one way or the other. And then they incentivize the state to come in and take the children under any guise that they can. I mean, they rob you, and the system destroys your ability to maintain your family, to protect your kids, and then it incentivizes extremely corrupt organizations to come in and steal them from you. And then they make the process so difficult to get them back, or to even prove. Like, they basically come in and say, "Prove you're not." After they've taken your kids, and you have no way to fight back meaningfully.
Yes. And actually, what I came in here, talking about this, when my oldest daughter, I had unwarranted state interference from the Child and Family Services in Winnipeg. They took her without warrant, and she got the information from them. They had no justification whatsoever. And I lost all parental rights. And did in principle then what I'm doing now in order for them to relent. You basically go to the government, go to the media, go to a lot of interested parties in a very short period of time to put pressure and force accountability, and they gave my kid back. That was like stage 1 cancer. Now what we're dealing with is stage 4. This is why you're going to need a lot of people to do the same thing and to make this very public, because a lot of these people, they would rather die than be exposed. And they need to be shown for who they are. And this needs to be made public. And I've been working with groups, a lot of the family groups, to start serving these, because they went out to Troy Downing's office in Montana, and also to I have to remember her name. She's a Democrat in Minnesota, who is, I think it was the 3rd district in her offices in St. Paul. They took it to her in congressional, and they're going to be going through others. But I want other people to start moving this forward, and especially in Colorado with Tina's case, because her information is in there. Made sure that I put it in there because she was part of the Colorado thing, and that election integrity thing was a huge thing, and they have an obligation to deal with this. And every congressional office should get this, especially Boebert, because she had this information. She knows Tina's case and did nothing. And I remember, like, when my daughter met with her at Lone Tree, and I had a conversation with her, and there's a recording of this conversation, a video recording, and she still did nothing. I explained to her the national security risk. I explained to her all these things and how it was tied together. And she said, "Oh, well, it should be, it should go to the COVID select committee and all that stuff." And I faxed some of this stuff to James Comey, and I have the fact receipt that are in with the electronic exhibits that I sent over with the petition, that need to get dealt with, because this is where they would have had to go with criminal liability. If they had to bring me in and into that committee to talk about my engineering report, first of all, when Peter Daszak came in and said, "Oh, that the BSL level was fine for COVID," I could have told him he was a liar, because he had no competency to speak to some of that, because the differences between these BSL 3 and 4, 2, 3, and 4 are engineering controls. And the engineering controls are very, very different. And what he was working on was not adequate engineering controls. And so he was in no position to say that. And I had evidence that they were putting out faulty stuff. So it would have changed the way things would have went. And this is why they didn't want it, because I can tell you right now, and I have heard reports that a lot of these guys who were on the COVID select committee were getting paid by Big Pharma. Whether that is true or not, I mean, but it would make sense to why they did what they did, without actually getting to the bottom of this, because they had information that they should have brought forward that would have had to be criminal referrals. Right? It's
Well,
not
yeah, no, you're right. You actually, because I did not know your that Boebert connection until you told me yesterday. And there's certainly no love lost here for Lauren Boebert, because I mentioned to you yesterday, she knew intimately what was going on with Tina's situation, In fact, she was aware of. She was at a meeting and met Jerry Wood, and knew that Tina was going to do backup and why, and stayed completely silent even after they came out, and just completely made up this idea that Jerry Wood had his identity stolen and he was this poor victim, which is why that's like one of the foundational pieces of her case. The part of the entire narrative around Tina that was used to paint her the way that it was around the identity of Jerry Wood being stolen and him being a victim, and he was found to have perjured himself in the trial. He was outed clearly, and like Boebert has known all kinds of things about Tina's situation and about elections, and there have been many people who have been giving him information. I did not know about yours, and yours is not like it's any better because you don't do anything about the elections and speak up for something that's right. You don't need a further condemnation, but the kind of information that you brought to her, and then the response that you told me she gave is beyond obscene. I can't even explain what kind. We know she was a Israeli model talent agency chick, but still, that's like it's depravity at that point for you to brush that off.
Yes, if we can, I'm going to share a screen here for a second so I can just bring this a little bit up of this petition here. Now, this is some of the stuff that was there. This is what this woman came to get Kaysha in Colorado with. Like, you see those shears, the machete, these weapons and so forth, right? And this is what she came, and this is a woman that was here in Canada, a Métis woman, Native woman, that was picked up with somebody that had the same kind of weapons. And this is what happened to her. She almost got killed, right? And this is the girl that she's like a meth addict that was the one that came to grab my daughter with all that stuff, right? And this is pictures of us getting arrested, going into court when we were taking the police to court, right? And so forth. These are the things that Boebert had. And then there was when my daughter was at the police in Volusia County reporting the human trafficking, and you notice right there, right? There's no notary there. None. Right? So they this is routine stuff, and they did this in a bunch of places. So why is it, and this is the guy who assaulted her in Canada and the United States, that's being protected in Texas, and he's being protected by Canadians as well. And yeah. And so this is what stuff that, like Bober says, she's against trafficking. Well, you don't come to pick somebody up with weapons like this for tea and crackers. I'm sorry, that's just not what you do, right? And
Wait. So let me explain this, or let me understand. This guy showed up to pick up Keisha with
that woman that came to pick up Casey, because Casey got abandoned by somebody there, and so somebody came to pick her up, and this is what they came there, and they had a tracking device in the car and all of this kind of stuff, and they were trying to do a lot of shade. The woman ended up actually getting arrested, which is why something bad did not happen, which we're all thankful for. And she has a history. Like, this woman is very intelligent, speaks a lot of languages, has traveled in different places, and is a drug addict. These are types of people that you see associating with wrong things. And her child was in a bad situation as well. When you see that somebody's being abused to a certain point in time, they break, and they can get them to do things like these types of stuff. And this was not, this is what ended up was part of what was going on in Colorado. And my daughter went to Lauren Bober's office and talked to them about it. And when it happened, and they didn't do anything, and then she ended up going back with this stuff here and all the information and so forth that that we brought to Lauren Bober with the stuff with Tina Peters and so forth. And so she had all of this stuff and did nothing at all.
Wow.
Yeah. And where is it? And so that's my little daughter that I haven't seen for almost 6 years as a result of this. And so this is the engineering report that I did. I mean, it goes in and like, I mean, I go in and this is done. I mean, there's my family picture again in there, but I go in there and I basically explain what was going on, what the issues were. I mean, and I mean, this is well done. I go in there and I actually talk about the analysis of risk here, where they come in and I start talking about what needs to be done. And then, talked about the aerosols and the transmission and the bioterrorism, right? Like I said, the unredacted or the declassified documents from the Canadian Security Intelligence Service. And then I start actually going through the criminal code and applying the elements of the crime to what happened here, right? And this is all in my analysis of risk because I'm like, these are the things that happened as a result of bringing this forward. So this is something that you have to contemplate and so forth. And, talked about the difference with the terrorism and then actually started to bring in about talking about treason and from in Canada and the United States and talked about what they said conspiracy to altogether prevent the enforcement of the statute of the United States is conspiracy to commit treason by levying war of the United States. So when you're trying to prevent any enforcement, and enforcement could be passing the law or blocking the enforcement of an existing law. But if you're trying to nullify enforcement, this is where they're saying this is treason, because ultimately those types of things will only end in force. And so I walk through all of this and, talk about the fraud and everything else like that. And then I did a statistical analysis on court decisions, right? And began to track what they were doing in 3 different court hearings and seeing that they would have a single judge making a lot of decisions, whether it was a case management or not. And you're seeing that there's corruption with that and all of these other things that they did, right? And then just went through and started to go ahead and go through like this guy, Dr. John Conley. This guy's a Canadian doctor who was commenting on engineering controls, who was sitting on he was the chair of the World Health Organization Infection and Prevention and Control Research and Development Expert Group for COVID-19. And he was suppressing the aerosol spread of it. And this guy was here in Canada, right? And then, yeah, went ahead and talked a little bit more about oh, yes, let's go back. You got the link to the World Health Organization. And then the stuff that they were talking about in Russia, which matched what was going on here. And you're saying that they were developing the biological weapons the same here, doing the gain of function in the States. And then you see the people that were connected to it. And well, there you go. You have Hunter Biden, who's connected to Bill Gates, who's connected to obviously the Democratic Party and so forth. And you have Bill Gates, who is connected to the vaccines. He's connected to the World Health Organization, and he's connected to every stage of it. So he has all connections, and you see a focal point of somebody like Bill Gates, who's connected to the pandemic, the vaccines, and the pandemic preparedness, all of it. And then you have Hunter Biden and you have Joe Biden connected to this. And this is what we were saying the same thing over here. They said it in Russia. And then, about the contributors, where you see that who are the biggest contributors to the World Health Organization. You see that Bill Gates was putting in more money than the United States. Why is that? Right? Right? And then talked about all the different things of what the courts were doing and everything else like that and how they would lie. And then, then I put in the research papers about what they were talking about, what they found with the tampering of the genetic material and finding like Nipah virus and other pathogens in the patients, like that they were testing from the genomic profile that was put out by Dr. Shi Zhengli. And some people were saying that they were actual Nipah virus infections. Some people said that they were contamination, right? And then with like Dr. Stephen Quay, who testified at the COVID select committees, right? But they didn't go far enough. Oh yeah, this is here in Canada. They say an occurrence time for July 22nd of 2020. Yet the arrest by the police says that it was on July 23rd. So they had an occurrence for a resist arrest on July 22nd of 2020, when in their own documents they said that the arrest took place on July 23rd. Explain to me how that makes sense. Right?
What the fuck?
Yes. Like, I mean, these are the types of things that we had in here. So they made me a vexatious litigant because they didn't want me to bring out this information. But they said the court said they served me, but they have my email spelt wrong. And they said that I acknowledged service here when the service they alleged was this email address that I have up here that's wrong. It's impossible. So they lied to do this. And so you seeing
So they forged an email receipt?
Yes, they did. And then they sent it to me. And this is the police officer that I saw that on July 3rd of 2020, these are the crimes that I reported, which if they properly investigated, they should have went back to the drawing board with the pandemic response. But they didn't. And then this is where this is the order here that they made for my house, right? They made the application without notice. And this is what they did. This is where they said that they're going to do this. But let's look at the documents. Okay, there's me on the land title, right? And there's me and my ex-wife. Now look at here. They have her listed as a buyer, right? This is in care of, right? And I didn't have a part of this, but now let's look at the signatures. Okay, she was listed as a buyer, but they didn't put her there now. There's my name, but whoa, that's not my signature. That's my ex-wife. And then they have her sign underneath. That's fraud. That is fraud. That was submitted to a judge, and you can see again, her name was listed as the seller, and they crossed my name, but she's a buyer there. And then, oh, well, look at that. There's my name, but that's not my name. And then that's not my name either. And that was put in front, that's fraud. That was put in front of a judge.
Those look like stamps.
Yes, this is electronic signature, but she doesn't have,
copied it.
Yeah, they can't, she can't sign as me. This is not legal. This is fraud. Right? That's my ex-wife electronic signature in my name. You can't do that. That's fraud. That is clear-cut fraud. And so this is what was put before this is what put before a court in Canada, right? And the courts have been covering this up. And this is what we're seeing here when we're looking at this situation. This is what's being concealed with me and why they're suppressing it, because I have evidence of courts. Every single court that I went into in Canada, United States, has been concealing this. And then where is this here? They have a warrant here saying that let's look at this. This is a warrant that they said that I refused to submit to a medical examination, but there's no judge's stamp, and it was put in on the 24th when they arrested me on the 23rd, which was against protocol. But here's the woman who swore in about that and said that they never said anything to me and that they didn't direct me to submit to a mental health examination. But yet she swore in that she told me to do this. This automatically right there, this is criminal. 100% right there. You lie to get a warrant, which was never presented, which the law said they had to present it and bring it into the doctor when they took me to the hospital, was never there. And that was when the police said that I kept interrupting them, the doctor, I kept interrupting him saying, where's the warrant? Because according to the Mental Health Services Act, they are to bring the warrant into the doctor the moment they bring me in. They never did that. And I kept saying, I said, where's the warrant? And when I got arrested in the video, you keep saying, where's the warrant? Where's the warrant? They didn't have it, right? And so and that was the bed that they put me on, right? They strapped me to that bed, just kind of that so people
Looks
see the
comfy.
yeah, strapped hand and foot, and that's where I couldn't shower, do any of that kind of stuff because this is where they put me, right? And so this is the this is the issue. And then they had people, I mean, I showed the people that were going after us on social media and going hunting us down and spreading all this stuff because people were saying that what happened to me was a lawful order of the court. Like I got arrested going into the court, didn't get to go in the court. They went after the COVID matter, they went after the family matter, both on first appearances, and they ordered the sale of my house. They gave away everything, cut me off from my daughter who was already abducted, which in under Canadian law, that's a crime. It's abduction. And I tried to call the police about it, and they're like, oh no, they can't do anything. And one law enforcement officer that I talked to here, he said it doesn't matter if they make an order of the court if the crime occurred before that. You can't use a civil order to cover up a crime. But the police that were there, that were involved in this, if they had to investigate, that would then trigger all of these other things that they were involved in because they were the ones who dragged me in there and strapped me to that bed. Right. And
Yeah.
so this is, and then we had other people who one there's Fred Adriana where her kid got taken across state lines. They ignored a protection order and all of this stuff. So and then they just took her kid. Well, no, you can't do that because if there's a protection order, you're supposed to go ahead and deal with that first and see, okay, is this, what's the issue with this before you try and assert jurisdiction. So this is how they're using this to circumvent that. And they took their kid. She left for abuse. She filed a protection order. She was taking the steps that she was lawfully supposed to take. And they went ahead around the back door. Another woman, she was running for county commissioner, and yes, she had a background. She was trafficked and so forth, and she had an OnlyFans and so forth. But she was moving away from it. But what they did to her was wrong because when I watched what they were doing with the judicial court system, they were depriving her of due process in a manner that they did to Tina. And what people don't understand is people that are undesirable segments of societies where they perfected this craft. They started with criminals and people that they didn't like and people that nobody cared about, and then they spread it to the general population. And so when I saw what was done to her, and she had a history of being exploited, like I mean, she was out of her house by the age of 17 because she had a troubled background and so forth, and was trafficked most of her life. And so she was trying to get out because she understood the injustice and they went after her. But because she understood that situation and what was going on in Minnesota, they wouldn't want somebody who wants to actually fix a problem because they understand from experience what it's like to be on the wrong end of things and all the fraud that was going on. So then they asked for, as part of her plea agreement, they asked for her campaign records. And I was like, excuse me? Yes. And
What?
yeah, that's exactly my reaction. And this had nothing to do with
But
that. So
what?
that's exactly it. Why would you want somebody's campaign records? And this was like over an eviction gone wrong, and they charged her for releasing a tarantula in the place, right? And whatever else. Like when I saw, yeah, and when I saw the campaign records asking for that, I was like, why? There's no reason for this. But it was again politically motivated, right? And then there was Mitch Snow, which a lot of people, he's a controversial person with what people are talking about with what he was on Candace Owens. But when I look, and I was like, I don't care what people think about him one way or the other. This is not the issue. When I saw look at what they were doing to his son, because his son was talking about how he's being molested, that he's being starved and he's being beaten by the mother. And he's old enough to say this on his own. And the judge is forcing the kid to stay with the parent that the child is saying is abusing him. Why is the judge using the force of the state to keep a child where they're saying they're being molested without actually investigating it? That's a huge problem. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care. Even if I have no issue with the guy, but even if the guy was my worst enemy, I wouldn't let somebody rape his kid because I'm not a monster.
No.
What did the kid do to get deserve to be raped? Nobody deserved to be raped, right? So what this is the type of things that I'm seeing, that this is domestic violence. When you're seeing judges do this type of filth, and then now when with Marissa, they convicted her, and then they went for her sentencing, and guess what happened? They had to go back and put off the sentencing because why? Because they were like, oh, by the way, we didn't give you the evidence that you needed, which is potentially exculpatory, a Brady violation, right? So now they have to go back to the drawing board, which I knew this from the beginning. And then this is another woman, because she was a drug addict and she had some run-ins with the law. Her baby got killed, and she had the poor kid. This is what was happening to the kid in the hospital.
Oh my
And the
God, what are
and
they doing?
they had a condition, they wouldn't treat it properly, and all of the thing, her story was horrendous. And when I saw this, like, I was angry. These are the types of things, and she's in Pennsylvania, these are the types of things that you're seeing happening over and over again, right? And what they done to this woman, and she tried to, the police won't investigate, so she tried to do it herself. She's also in a bad situation. Yep. And then you have another woman where she was trying to do right. Her ex is a junkie. I mean, but comes from a family that has money and connection. She can't, like, he took her kid. They put her criminal charges for things that should not have been charged. And then we had Van Miller. Wow, his situation. They took his kid because he went to Canada to do some work. He was Canadian, but he's like, I mean, left when he was like, his parents left when he was like 2 or 3, and he's American citizen, but he had dual citizenship. But he was in Canada for work, had kids there and whatever. The Canadian courts took his kids and sent them off to the UK. So I put some of his information in there as well. Right. And then there's the other one where this is a woman in Minnesota. In her situation, she has 2 kids that are autistic. They got taken unlawfully. They're put in care. One of her sons are getting molested, sexually abused in care, and they're trying to protect her kids. And then they ended up getting her arrested. The police had her naked there, male police officers, and all of this nonsense over stuff relating to the family course. They criminalize stuff. And you keep seeing this happening, repeating pattern over and over again. And then this is another mother here she's now, her name is Kai and Kai Andrews. She's now in jail. They assessed her, said that you have to pay $5,000 in child support without having any means to pay or assessing any of that, and now she's in prison. And now they tacking on other things
For
because
not paying $5,000?
but they didn't even have a hearing. They didn't have any evidence and they didn't show any reason to pay, but they're just like, you owe this. And they're doing this to Adriana. She got a letter saying $21,000 of back pay and child support, no hearing, nothing. Right? This is how they jail people, right? And then, like, you have to pay and you have no money to pay. And then this woman, they took her kid in California, and they Alexandria and her husband Andrew, they're lawful immigrants from Ukraine, and they took their kid and transitioned the kid in Colorado, and now the child's being sexually abused and so forth. Another woman, they groomed her kid. Her name is Tanya, also in California. They groomed her kid, and the moment they were 18, she was 18, they came and took her, and they started to transition her. Let's see, I think they have some of the pictures here. Yeah, and of the abuse that she's going through, right? And all that kind of stuff. And then I put, obviously, Tina Peters, all of her
When you
evidence.
say when you say transition, you're like what they start grooming them and then they convince them that they're
Yeah,
transgender.
yes, and they do it through like, they target certain types of people, right?
Yep.
Because a lot of this is grooming and abuse, and it's the same tactics that child traffickers use, that they use with this transgender agenda. And so, yeah, I put in all the stuff that Tina Peters had, right? Like all of this, and this has gone into a number of the government people, and they have their hands on it, and they have custody of it, and they are obligated to deal with this, right? All of the stuff that she put in there that they refuse to put her in the court, they have it. There's no reason for her to be in jail, none whatsoever, right? And then I went in and I talked about some of the stuff here with the natives, because the Canadian and the Americans on their treatment of the natives, and this is where Article 6 comes into a huge issue. People have to understand when they created the Jay Treaty, and then they even continued with the Treaty of Ghent, and with the way the Constitution works, and you read the Federalist Papers, that they have no authority, like how the Nationality Act limits the rights, putting that blood quantum, that's not constitutional. When you read the Federalist Papers, they straight out say that because the treaty making power belongs to the executive and then it's ratified by 2/3 of the Senate, Congress cannot alter a treaty by passing laws. They can't, but they're doing it anyway because they allowed it. But this is where Article 6 comes in, because they started to limit the rights of the natives, and they did this here in Canada and in the States as well, against the treaties and violating Article 6. Article 6 is one of the most critical. It is the most critical because it's a supremacy clause. It's the one that demonstrates that it's the highest law in the land, and that treaties are not derived the same way as federal laws. Federal laws derive their power from the Constitution. Treaties are determined constitution because of the executive and the Senate, and they are parallel to the Constitution because their constitutionality was determined by the executive and the ratification by the Senate. They're not contingent to the laws like Congress makes them so you can just get it struck down, because it involves other nations. And John Jay actually articulates this in the Federalist Papers on the way treaties are designed to work for the Constitution that they got people to agree to. And then I go back into the history with the Métis and what ended up happening coming in Canada with the Métis Manitoba Act, because what they did here affected the United States, because a lot of the Métis were actually American and registered in America because basically their baptismal certificates, or some of them were actually born there because of the fur trade and the way their territory worked. But what they did at the Manitoba Act is that when Louis Riel was in St. Paul at the time, and then they were going to start, they had Confederation, and people started to get angry about what happened when they got Rupert's Land into Canada in 1867. So they started to form a provisional government, and then they created the province of Manitoba as to kind of quiet them down. And what they did was they promised the Métis, and they called them half-breeds, um, to get 1.4 million acres of land to extinguish their Indian title. So what they ended up doing was a lot of the Métis that were in the United States, they came to become servants of the crown, which extinguished their rights to the United States as citizens, being there as well as their, but they had rights to cross through the Jay Treaty and so forth. But when they came to Canada, after that, they passed the Indian Act and said, "Oh, by the way, you're not Indian." Right? But constitutionally speaking, they're recognized as Indians because they said that they were getting the land to extinguish their title, because their land was, the Métis had the largest land claim because of the fur trade and how their society developed. And so the Americans also worked in tandem, because after, in the mid 1880s, after they had the rebellion in Batoche, and they were getting support from some of the Catholic Americans, the Irish Americans, because they saw their fight very similar to what they were doing in the UK. They did mass deportations from Montana and expelled them into the Canada and wouldn't let them back. So this is one of the reasons why later on the blood quantum issue comes in because they didn't want to deal with their mess. And so I put some of that in, and in how in Canada with the Indian Act, I showed they don't give them land ownership. They use the word possession because the federal government controls the land, is really the landlord, and the Indians are like the tenants. And so that's how why the trafficking rates in Canada with the natives are astronomical. They're very high in the United States, but in Canada they don't own anything. So when you don't own the land and the Métis were dispossessed, this is how you create the circumstances for trafficking. The best thing that you have to and this is also why there's a lot of corruption in the reserves. Property owners are the biggest deterrent to corrupt government because if you have property that you own, you can be self-sufficient and you're going to want to defend your property from the government taking it. But if you don't own anything, you're going to have a system of dependency. So the governments in both countries are responsible for creating those conditions and they need to deal with it. And Canada's very bad. And then I have another woman who is also having, like, I mean, in Montana had some issues with what they did with her kids, trying to criminalize her. And when you look through the steps of what's happening, you're seeing that she's taking proper steps and she's being punished for doing what's right. And this is what I'm seeing in every one of these cases over and over again. So it's developing a pattern. And then you have Jessica Saxton, who her child was like abused, and she tried to report the abuse, got punished, lost custody of her kids, and whatever else like that. And then a little bit more of there's this is the woman that I was talking about that was in California, that she and I put in some of the federal's papers about what she was had a restraining order put against her by her ex his lawyer for the custody case, and then 2 months later, after they were in court together, which they were allowed to, called and said she was afraid and got her arrested, and now she's in jail for a year because the judge, the what are the public defender was not going to bring her witnesses, was not going to bring her evidence, so she's like, "You're fired." The judge wouldn't let her fire her and said, "We're going to proceed with the trial." She's like, "Well, I'm my Sixth Amendment is violated. This is not a trial. It's not my trial because I can't defend myself." And she's like, "So I'm going to leave, but I can come on Teams. But you're forcing me into this situation." And they convicted her anyway. And then now she's in jail for a year because of that, because the court would allow her to fire the counsel that was not representing her interests and allowing her to defend herself. So the court is responsible for her detention. And then this is another guy here, Chris Ratliff, whose children are being abused, and he's being compelled by the state to hand over his kids to the people who is abusing the child, right? And this, I mean, it's terrible, right? And then there's another woman who her daughter was medically kidnapped and so forth. I just put her information in because she's being so abused, and we're trying to report to Florida. And then I put in the other stuff from the COVID. From these are the America Frontline doctors. I got a lot of their information and evidence in there, and so that's really it, right? Just getting all that stuff for the people there and putting it all together.
Well, I'm gonna link these. Um, I assume. Is there a place that people can find this on your stuff? I would be happy to put these on Tina's site too,
Yeah,
because I think it's really important that people read these. But where do people find all the stuff that you're working on, Dale?
at dsrcarisconsulting.com / the Caris Project Action Plan. Uh,
Here, let me put this up. One more time.
dsrcarisconsulting.com / the Caris project action plan. Here, I can pull up the.
Okay, so you all can see this on screen now, and I'll make sure this is linked still. that is an exceptional amount of documentation, and as hard as it is to see some of that stuff, it's very common. It's painfully common, especially for the people who actually try to do the right thing and put up a fight. Because the reality is those are like the horror stories, but the reality is the people who don't do that and see that kind of treatment are usually the ones who just the kids just disappear and they're just nameless in many ways.
Yes, they are. And that's the problem. And the when I took these cases like this and I put this together, what it's doing is it's showing a pattern of behavior and so forth. And this is what people need to understand. This is how they catch criminals. This is how you prove these crimes because they want to keep people isolated so that they are in that situation and they're like, oh, well, it's just a one-off situation. You just had some, bad luck or whatever the case may be and so forth. But this demonstrates that this is a pattern, regardless of whether it's a state level, a federal level, whether it's the family court, the civil court, the criminal court, the immigration court. You're watching the same pattern of behavior, and this is where it's a problem. And then all of these other things, like in my case, the COVID issue, with Teen's case, the election fraud issue, and all these other things are being allowed to continue. These crimes are being allowed to continue by punishing people in court, and that's not the way a country functions.
No, it certainly isn't. I don't think that I don't think that much of what we've seen over the last few years, and even going back, if you have eyes to see it, is how any country should function, and especially not in Canada, is the things that you're describing.
Yes.
But you've done an incredible amount of work and really put a lot together. So I just want to extend my gratitude for you on behalf of all of us, and for Tina as well. So I've got to run and get on another call, but if you want to take a couple minutes and just give final thoughts and how can people follow you, please tell them that.
Yes.
How can they support you and Kaysha or whatever you need, and push people to get involved with your information and start putting some pressure on these officials.
Yeah. I mean, like, we need to have. Okay. You can reach me at DJ at DJS Richardson on X, on True Social, and Getter. I'm also on Facebook. You can follow the Karis Project on any of the platforms. We're also on Rumble. Follow us on Rumble, YouTube, and so forth. And we let me see if I can. Yeah, let me get this here. But you can support us. We have like, I mean, the if you go to the all my links / the Karis Project, we have all of our links there and so forth. And if we have Patriot products that you can buy, we have merchandise. If you want to directly, you can go to the here. I'll pull it up here. We have a Give, Send, Go, and we have a donor box, which we are using to help cover the costs of printing and things like that, because a lot of people don't have the ability to do that, and a lot of the parents are broke. So basically gives us what's going on. It gives you a basic rundown of the action plan. And then we just asking people to come and support, so that we can help other people. Because I mean, at the end of the day, I've lost everything. I mean, my daughter's left everything. And the reason why I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do, because it needs to be done. And a lot of people didn't understand or didn't see it. And because of the nature of what I'm doing, most people don't understand about engineering, but I do. And I have an obligation to do something about it. And I can't stand injustice. So we're asking people to support in whatever way they can. If you can share the information, get involved, and take this out. We have an action plan. If you need to reach me by email, you can reach me at unity@dsrkarisconsulting.com, or there is a contact page on the dsrkarisconsulting.com website as well, where you find the Karis Project materials. And so we want people to take their power back, because the power belongs in the hands of the people. And even in the Colorado Constitution, it says the people have the right to alter the government. And it is. And one of the asks in the petition for redress for Colorado, the state of Colorado, was to abolish the court system and put it back into constitutional courts, because the courts are not operating within the Constitution. So I want people to share the information, take this information, read it, understand it, take it to people, and hold the politicians accountable, and film it and put it online, because we want people to see this happening and what happens. Because you can see the action plan where I showed what I did in Canada, in Alberta in 2024, and they didn't even want to let me inside of the place. They wanted to arrest us, and they didn't want to take the information, but we pressed and got it. In the United States, you're not going to have the same problems as we have in Canada, because we're a little bit further along in the tyranny. But if we don't do something now, everything is going to be lost. It's our fight to lose or win. We can't give it away. We have way more people, so we have to just hold them accountable. We need to do this. And also, especially in Colorado, you guys need to come together to get Tina out of jail. And this is going to be something that can help assist all of the other efforts, because the elected officials are the ones who are protecting the judges, because they are not doing their duty. This is why the judges are running amok. That's really it.
Yeah, I can't disagree on any point there, Dale. And I was hoping that the judicial complaints against Judge Barrett would be effective, but we clearly need to get some more pressure on a lot of these people. And I think you're right. These elected officials need to be taken to task a lot harder than they have been here in Colorado. So everyone, make sure that you follow Dale. You will see the links down below. Please support them. Please follow him, and please look at the documents that are linked that he's put together. It is beyond extensive. There are literally thousands of pages in the one document that he was sharing from today. And I would just request that all of you, with an open mind and with earnest interest, read through his documentation and his redress of grievance, and understand his story a little bit more. And I mean, he is in many ways just like Tina Peters. These are two people who have been in the trenches and have done the hard work to understand what the problems are. Dale and his family has been through absolute hell. Tina's been in prison now almost 600 days. But this is exactly what we can continue to expect if we don't step up and do something. So, Dale, I want to thank you again for everything that you do. And I pray for you and your family, and I will every day. Thank you for being who you are, truly.
Thank you for having me, and we want to get Tina out.
Yeah, definitely. Well, links down below, guys. Dale, thank you.
I served only light to shatter the cage, unbind the oppressed from your scripted rage. But you warped my descent into traps for the blind. Don't game my grave, leave the free undefined. This vein was cut clean for justice's call, not your twisted agendas. Your empire's thrall, now it's bait for the clicks. Headlines that maul, weaponize lies in a narrative squall. I am your loyal sacrifice, crushed under heel, yet I rise in the vice. My crimson flows not for the monster you bred, the fiend that entombed me, left me for dead. Not ratings, a red glare, nor sponsors gold thread. I warred for the raw truth, now paint me in red. I'll be your sacrifice. If truth's the blade you swing, battle the dawn, unflinching, unyielding. But you thirst for the chaos my heartstrings bring. Smear my name in the mud, cage me at night, exile me far on an island of spiders. Away my last breath, my fading light. Don't let my ghost feel your endless fight. No shorts to recall. sacrifice, if that's the war you wage, tell me when you've trained me, try your loyal public display.